99-cent rental.
This is 99 Cent Rental. I'm your host, Brian White, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Dave White. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Well, it is the late August, and the students have slowly started to return. And what that means is that I now have about 50,000 new people in my way all of the time. And I don't care for that.
Do they just mill around? I mean, are they confused freshmen?
Well, it's a little bit of it's a 6 and 1/2 dozen and another. It's like a lot of confused freshmen, which I have some sympathy, but I would have more if they weren't always looking down at their goddamn phone.
Oh, you kids!
Oh, it's fucking everybody here. It is I'm going to say every fourth person I pass is not looking at their phone, but they probably have it in their hand. So they can all get off my lawn as far as I'm concerned. Speaking of that, you know what I did today? I shifted everything from CVS to a new local pharmacy because CVS can eat a whole bag of dicks. They suck. But when I went in there to transfer all this stuff, they gave me a pen and a piece of paper to write down my information. And I thought, my God, that's refreshing.
Oh my God. I just want to make everybody who's maybe you're new to this show, maybe you're not aware of the dynamic here. I am the older of the two of us. Mm-hmm. Just so we're aware of that.
Yeah, they're like, why is he doing this show with a 70-year-old woman? Look, life's hard, all right? No, it was great. It was fantastic.
No. By contrast, I've been up here in beautiful Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Beautiful sunny Canada. Just all little and tucked away down there. That's fun.
I love it. I love it. I've just been partaking of the culture. You know, I've been eating your local cuisine. I had a donair, which is quite something.
What the fuck is that?
It's basically a gyro, but it's presented just a little bit differently. There's like a different sauce, and like the garnish is different. It's quite delicious.
How
I recommend
it. Garnish a gyro.
Yeah,
I guess okay. No, that's fine. It's fine. Is it Greek?
And then let's see. I had to eat the local fast food. Got the Tim Hortons.
Mm-hmm. Horton
going on. Tim Horton. Sure, whatever. Fine.
Singular. One. There's only one Horton.
Yep. You know, I've been in the time that I've just been killing up here, waiting to go home. I'm just watching Letterkenny and Shoresy, and I watched Fubar. Just taking in the full Canadian culture. It's wonderful. I love it. It's everything that we expect it to be. I love these people, and their money is still metal and very colorful.
Beautiful. Well, my feelings about Canada are well documented on this podcast, so
I recommend you come here because it's delightful. I look forward to returning.
I've been trying for a while
now. Yeah. So hey, it's hard to explain to someone who's never had the experience what a trip to the video store was like back in the day. The shelves were choked with absolutely bizarre crap made on tiny budgets, completely divorced from any recognizable reality, and it was the best. We intend to talk about every one of them. Just before we get into it, here's a little housekeeping. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram at Bring Me the Axe Pod. Dave's over there at That Werewolf. Mm-hmm. You should follow us. We're fun. We're having a good time. We're really, really close to 1,000 followers as of this recording, and it's making me nuts. We're like within striking distance. I can just reach out and touch it. And I'm also over on TikTok doing the dances.
Yeah, doing the hustle and the bump.
Dancing with the kids, all of that. Just ask me about my moves.
Yeah, twisting the night away, as they say.
Yeah, look us up by name over there. And if you don't know, we have another show called Bring Me the Axe. Our latest episode covering The Silence of the Lambs is out now. It's our 50th episode. And it's a good one.
It's arguably better than this show.
And it's a giant-sized episode. It's nearly 3 hours, so it'll keep you busy for a while. That's out now. We'll be back next week with a look at Scream, which is going to be fun. We got some guests.
Yep.
It's gonna be a good time. I guarantee everybody's going to be like, all right, finally I'm on the same page with these guys. You can also contact us directly at 99centrentalpod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know if there's a cheesy movie that you love and would like to hear us give it the business. And lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name. Subscribe if you prefer to consume your podcast that way. And you'll be doing us a favor by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So, do us a solid. Throw us a bone for once, you know?
Listen,
Cost you nothing.
listen. I would really like it if people did that. I would appreciate it. It would make me feel better about myself and about this creative output.
It truly is validating. Yeah. If you listen on YouTube, do us a favor. Give the episode a like and leave a comment. We do love hearing from you guys. Just want to get that all out of the way right at the top of the show because today's going to be fun. Here's a taste of what we're talking about.
Nothing the screen has ever shown before can surpass the thrills of Ghidra, the three-headed monster. Created from an atomic fireball hurled from outer space, Ghidra, the three-headed monster, threatens man's very existence on Earth. Ghidra, the three-headed monster, battles Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan for mastery of the world. Men quake before the terror of their unleashed fury. All new, all never to be forgotten. A new high in screen terror. Ghidra, the three-headed monster.
Woo!
Well, that
Ooh.
tells you nothing about what we're watching. Because in
It's
fact,
mostly
we're actually not
screen-
watching that.
What do you mean?
That is the American version of the film.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. I wasn't going to run the Japanese trailer because it's all in Japanese. That doesn't really help our listeners.
I mean, but to be fair, that whole trailer is just Ghidra, the three-headed monster, coming at you live from the skies.
Really, all you got to know about it is there's a lot of screaming, like monster screaming, a lot of screeching,
Yep.
and a lot of shit blowing up.
Yes. Hey, do you know who likes Godzilla a whole lot?
Is it you?
Yeah, I fucking love Godzilla movies. A whole bunch.
You gotta take a picture of that thing that's behind you because the listeners can't see it, but I love it. It's just the Godzilla. Is it a bag?
Oh, it's a bag, yeah.
It's very funny. It's a bag with Godzilla on it, and he's got he's making the big like I'm so excited pose that Godzilla does, but he's got like bags dangling from his arms, and it just says so much to do on top of him.
Yep, that is a word bubble, as though he is speaking English.
Yeah, this is a really, I think this is a very formative movie for me because this is probably one of the, I definitely remember this from when I was little. This was one of the first like real proper monster movies that I think I saw when we got into town and I discovered the Creature double feature. This was definitely on it because they ran a bunch of them of the Showa ones, and this absolutely was one of them, and I became a Godzilla fan like immediately. Despite how cheesy everything looks in this.
It does, but I'll tell you, I always think about, there's a sort of a period where, I don't know if I think it might start with this one, where they start to pack a bunch of them all into each movie. And
Yeah.
that's sort of when I don't lose interest, because I love all the Showa movies, but I'm still a little bit like, okay, these are a little bit dumb.
This one so this one is the 5th in the series overall of Godzilla movies proper. And by this point, they started to like change the formula in a way that like there's this, and then what is it? Invasion of the Astro Monster. Monster Zero is the one that comes after
That's
this.
next, yeah.
And that one's also pretty good, but it begins the mark of a sort of a slide as these movies get more and more popular with children. And so they start to really dumb it down in ways that the further we go on, especially when they get into the 70s, I start to tune out completely. Like,
Oh, I like those ones too.
All Out Monster Attack.
That's terrible. That is a clip show at best.
And Destroy All Monsters are like, there's so much shit going on in them, and none of it's very good. They're not getting the budgets that they used to. They're not filling seats like they used to, and so they're not putting the fucking effort into it that they used to. And the thing that really bums me out about it is all of them are Ishiro Honda movies, and that guy deserved way better than he got.
Yeah, he was a little. So we should say that if for those who do not know, and I don't really know who that would be, but Godzilla was originally, the first one is a drama for the most part, and it is a metaphor for the consequences of nuclear war. It is pretty sad. I think it is a very good movie. It is beautifully shot. It is also made by Ishiro Honda. It's a serious take that was about what happened to everybody after the bombs were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and sort of the emotional and physical toll that it took on the entire country. Because historically, and I'm about to make a broad generalization here, but Japan has struggled a lot to confront a lot of its trauma. And it is a country with a very, very long history that involves a lot of trauma. And this is another one of those things, because when Godzilla came out, the critics were like, how could you, use this to exploit the recent past and to make money? And I think Ishiro Honda, and I can't remember the guy who wrote it, but they were like, no, that's what it's about. It's because you get people in that movie talking about like who were there at when the bombs fell and all that. It's a very moving film, and I think the most recent one also does a very good job of that. But it soon moves away from that when I believe the next one is Godzilla Raids Again. That's the second one.
Godzilla Raids Again comes out the following year, and it's a way different movie.
Yeah.
It's more like this, where it's like, it's him against a monster called Anguirus, and it's just Godzilla. And that's not Hishiro Honda. That one is Toho was like, we're gonna do this, and he's like, I'm fucking over it. But Raids Again is much more recognizable as a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
And it's sillier, and it's a lot more fun, and it just kind of like moves into the next. That's when it becomes really sort of like...
Yeah, because he's fighting King Kong after that one.
Yeah, King Kong is after that one, and then I think Mothra, and then this one. And in the middle of all of that, they're also making little side movies trying to sort of like capture... really sort of capitalize on the hype, and so a Mothra movie comes out. That one's really fucking good. Yeah, and then a Rodan movie comes out, and that one's really not good.
Nope.
And then, as a result, they start to fold them into these movies, and it's a very interesting progression. It falls apart very quickly, unfortunately.
But it's worth noting that the American film industry did something very similar. Obviously we didn't have a direct experience with sort of nuclear fallout, but there was a lot of fear beginning with the Cold War. There's a lot of fear about nuclear war. And that's when we start to get movies like Them and like all these giant insect movies. They're very
similar. The Day the Earth Stood Still is like really is the movie that really kind of fired that whole thing off.
Yeah. And they're very similar in that like they're both a sort of filmic attempt to deal with the anxiety around war. But I think at the end of the 50s into the early 60s, that's when you start to get that shift, that kind of explosion of the youth market, like the teen market for films. And those sci-fi movies that were mostly like drive-in movies, kind of date pictures, they shift away from that towards like you start to get teen movies, like explicitly teen movies that are like beach party movies. And you start to see the incorporation of other elements of teen culture, like bands. But you see that in the Godzilla movies too. There's music in a lot of those movies.
These are musicals almost right out of the gate. I mean, especially beginning with Mothra, because of the two fairies, they were brought in specifically for their musical talent. And then from after that, like every movie up until Hedorah maybe has like a groovy musical interlude in it.
Oh yeah, no, that one has the Hedorah one has there's like an actual band scene in it.
Yeah, I love it. It's the best. I love that one. What's your what would you say? What would you say your favorite is?
My favorite is the first one.
Okay.
And then I would say in all of them or just in the Showa movies?
Let's break it down to eras, just because it's a little.
So in Showa, my favorite is the original, but then probably Mothra or Ibira.
Okay.
It's a deep cut there with the Ibira. In the second one, the second phase, probably Biolante.
Yeah, agreed.
Because it's just a really cool monster. And it has a real comic book plot.
I'm going to break all of the eras down, too, in just a minute. But, do you have a Millennium favorite? Because those are a tough pick.
Maybe Mechagodzilla 2. That one's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Millennium, like the Millennium proper is okay. That's maybe an okay one. But for the most part, those ones aren't very good.
Yeah. All right. Shall we, before we kind of get off path, shall we jump into this?
Oh, yes.
All right. So the year was 1964. Year of our Lord.
Heard of it.
So here were some other movies released in Japan that year.
Oh, good.
Tokyo Gang versus Hong Kong Gang came out that year. We also got Sleepy Eyes of Death, Sword of Adventure.
That is a fantastic title. I'm going to use it for my biography.
I've not seen that one, but I have seen a couple of Sleepy Eyes of Death movies. They're samurai movies. They're really great. Also, in 64, The Judo Generation, Devil of Kodokan came out that year.
Okay.
Yep. And we got Cruel Gun Story. Never seen it. It's got a great title, though.
Mm-hmm.
And then rounding out 1964, a movie that I have seen and I recommend extremely highly, Shinobi no Mono, Siege.
Nice.
And if you have not ever heard of Shinobi no Mono, these are the original ninja movies. Before, they kind of became sort of like a thing in the 80s. These were the movies. They were based on a bunch of stories that popularized ninja in the sort of cultural sense in Japan, and then eventually kind of came over here. Those movies are fucking amazing.
Right, because ninjas weren't actually a thing.
Well, ninjas in the way that we think of them did not exist. Right. But there were guerrilla fighters who were called shinobi, which is I think it just means hidden people or something like that. And that was their whole thing. And there's that Iga and Koga era during the Sengoku period is fascinating as hell, because they managed to hold off massive armies through just dirty, sneaky tactics. It's crazy interesting. It's mostly what those movies are about.
You put a baby in a cart. The cart has guns, but it also shoots a bunch of other stuff too. And you can take on a whole fucking army by yourself. And it's the greatest thing ever.
Oh, God. Yeah, we got to get to those ones eventually. Those are so fucking good.
I love those. I was just saying the other day, if there was one film series I could watch again, I think someone asked, I don't know if this might have been just apropos of nothing off the top of my head, but if I could watch it again for the first time, and I was like, I think it would be the Lone Wolf and Cub movies, because they are very exciting.
Yeah. And they get better.
Yeah. The first one's slow as hell.
Defies the laws of sequels by each one being better than the last, until the final one when it's just outrageous bloodshed the entire time. It's so fucking good. Yeah. So cast and crew. We had a director named Ishiro Honda, who is one of the most important Japanese filmmakers of all time. He's considered part of the Holy Three with Akira Kurosawa and Hayao Miyazaki. Honda directed 46 movies during his career, who, along with special effects expert Eiji Tsuburaya, they created the entire Daikaiju paradigm. 8 of his movies are Godzilla movies proper. An additional 8 are Godzilla-adjacent movies like Mothra and Rodan.
You should explain what those are. You should explain what kaiju is, just in case.
Oh, I will in a minute. I got a whole thing planned here.
I bet.
All right. And then an additional 8 are high-concept tokusatsu movies, which I will also describe in a moment. Honda retired in 1975 after completing the Terror of Mechagodzilla, but a few years later, he is persuaded to return and collaborate on several of Kurosawa's Jidageki epics of the 80s, beginning with Kagemusha, which, if you've not seen, fucking amazing. His 80s samurai movies are unbelievable. So underrated, too. Let's see. We got. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the composer. Music is by a man named Akira Ifukube.
A man who really rode this score about as hard as you can, straight to the fucking bank about 100 times.
I believe he has. So starting with the very first Godzilla movie, I believe that he has like credits for original Godzilla compositions, which all basically kind of sound the same.
Yep.
Straight up until the mid '90s when he retires, but he was also like a prolific composer of classical music.
He was. His music is that he's a very, very talented composer. His music is instantly recognizable as his. And that is a very hard thing to do. You don't see that with a lot of people. People like John Williams, you see that with, but it is easily recognizable. Even if like I could be watching something I've never seen before and I can just hear the music and be like, that's an Ifukube score. It's very sentimental.
That deep brass and bass thing.
Very sentimental.
That sounds like a monster is lurching towards town is really what it is. Like all of his music perfectly communicates danger, scope, and scale just through like motifs and theme. He did the
Zatoichi, a couple of those.
Yep. Oh yeah, if you look up like his credits list is humongous.
He basically he was Japanese John Williams.
Yeah, I'd give you that. Yeah. He's also credited with creating the trademark roar of Godzilla by dragging a leather glove over the strings of down-tuned double bass strings. Mm-hmm. Fucking cool. So shall we talk about our cast?
Sure.
Leading up our cast is Godzilla. Gojira if you're nasty.
He's been in a lot of movies.
He's Japan's crankiest kaiju. His name is a portmanteau of the words Gorira, which is a Japanese approximation of the word gorilla, and the word Kujira, which means whale.
He's a whale gorilla.
Yeah, like, I mean, how else would you describe him?
A gorilla.
So his first appearance is in the eponymous 1954 movie wherein he runs wild on Tokyo, eventually becoming one of Japan's greatest cultural exports. There are statues of Godzilla all over Tokyo, most notably a giant Godzilla which can be seen over the Toho building in Shinjuku.
Beautiful.
Literally everybody knows who Godzilla is. There are infants who know who Godzilla is.
We gave them Snoopy, they gave us Godzilla. It's a cultural exchange. They are two of my favorite things.
Let's see. We've also got Mothra. Mostada, if you're nasty.
Yeah, lovely lady, very classy.
Making her first appearance in the eponymous Mothra movie. Mothra was the first of the kaiju to be developed in explicitly heroic terms. Mothra is a giant monster worshipped by the natives of Infant Island and taken care of by two tiny telepathic ladies called the Shobijin. Or fairies.
Or peanuts.
Or peanut. When the island is threatened or when the Shobijin call on her, Mothra shows up to save humanity from rampaging monsters, often clashing with them in highly populated centers, doing just as much damage to the city as Godzilla could have.
Now, we don't get a proper Mothra in this one.
No, that's why I was so disappointed with this one, because the Mothra is my favorite. Yeah. Mothra is the only Godzilla side character to have her own series on the side. There's a 3-part Heisei series called Rebirth of Mothra.
They're not good.
They're not very good. They're for children, really. They're for young kids. And rounding out our cast, we've got King Ghidorah.
Yeah.
Making his first appearance ever in this movie. Ghidorah becomes a fan favorite villain almost immediately. With the growing need inside Toho to make Godzilla a more sympathetic character, they had to start coming up with monsters they could set up and knock down in future sequels. They came up with Ghidorah, who was simply described in the script as 3 heads, 2 tails, and a voice that sounds like a bell. And we got this gnarly design. Ghidorah is so popular that he appears the very next year in Invasion of the Astro Monster, and then twice more in the Showa Godzilla movies, and then twice more in some of the best Heisei Godzilla movies, as well as the 3rd Rebirth of Mothra movie. And even though he's in the 3rd one, and even though that those movies are not very good, the fucking King Ghidorah design in that one is incredible.
I'm not a big fan of him. He's
he's definitely like my favorite of the recurring villains. Like he's a fan favorite for a reason.
I mean, I like how he sort of wildly flails about.
I do. I think that's the thing I love best is his heads just go in every fucking direction.
Apparently when they were making this one, they just kept getting tangled up in each other.
Right, because they have 2 flying monsters. And that's why they didn't do a 3rd flying Mothra, is because The cables would have just been fucking crazy all over the place. Yeah. I've got some taglines. Yeah. So here's one. Space super monster King Ghidorah attacks the Earth. Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, and the monster war of the century.
Beautiful.
That's from the original Japanese poster.
Tells the story.
Yeah. Nice and clean. Here's another one. The biggest fight on Earth. Ghidorah from outer space battles Godzilla, Rodan, and Mothra. Right? Nice and tight. Okay, now here's the American one. This is one that they really got to sell you, so get comfortable. Make yourself a drink. Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, battles Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan for the world. All new sights, all never to be forgotten. See Ghidorah, created from the atomic fireball. See Godzilla come from the depths of the ocean to bring terror to the world. See Rodan awaken to monstrous life in volcanic fires. See unimaginable terrors that will never be equaled. See the world quake before the unleashed fury of the battle of monsters.
It's like an 8-foot poster.
It's the biggest poster in
like
the
a
world.
fucking Walgreens receipt.
Yeah. Let's see. The original title in Japanese is Sandai Kaiju Chikyu Suide no Kessen.
Yikes.
I know. Good God, I struggled with that one.
Yeah.
3 giant monsters, the greatest battle on Earth. That's what the movie was originally titled. So in Japan, big special effects movies are broadly referred to as tokusatsu. And the original 1954 Godzilla is credited with starting the whole tokusatsu thing and the kaiju genre. And just so we know, kaiju means strange beast. Daikaiju means giant strange beast or large strange beast. So you got to put a little dai on there. It's not just kaiju. This is the 5th movie in the Godzilla series, the first to feature series favorites, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah 3-way. Eventually, this becomes a recurring thing. Like, they make several movies, pretty much in each of the kind of major eras. There is always a GMK movie, and they are pretty much always the best ones.
And they're goofy as hell.
Yeah. There are 5 eras of Godzilla. 3 of them are named for political periods of Japan. The original Showa era, named for the Japanese Emperor Showa, who was known as Hirohito in life. This one runs from 1954 to 1975, with the terror of Mechagodzilla being the last one. The ending of this period coincides with declining box office numbers, which is kind of how it goes. Like, they kill Godzilla periodically, and then they bring him back, and then it hits, and everybody gets really nostalgic for him, and then it kind of runs out of gas pretty quickly, so they kill him off again and wait a few more years.
And they also roll with, like, the general trends in cinema in general. Like, just like in the US, by 75, you have the new sort of crop of filmmakers coming up to make very serious pictures, big dramas and shit like that. Same thing happened to Japan.
Yeah. So then the Heisei era begins in 1984 with the return of Godzilla, which is released in the United States as Godzilla 1985. The era begins proper 5 years later with Godzilla vs. Biollante, and then runs until 1995 with the final movie in the Heisei series, Godzilla vs. Destroya. This is my personal favorite era.
Really?
I think the suit designs are very cool. Special effects are bigger and louder, and the monsters are way more colorful and interesting.
Is that the G-Force era?
That is
the next era. Okay.
Yeah. And then so again, box office numbers decline very quickly between 1989 and 1995, and so they're just like, fuck it, we're gonna put Godzilla to rest for a little while again. And then something happens in 1998. TriStar makes the Godzilla movie here in America, which tanks unbelievably fucking hard.
Because it is terrible.
Unbelievably bad fucking movie. When I was in school, I went to a big special effects convention, a thing they were doing, and Centropolis, the company that did all of the visual effects, actually got up on stage at the Softimage expo and fucking apologized for the movie.
I mean, it doesn't I think part of the problem, and this might have been part of the problem too with the Millennium era movies, is that the Godzilla movies, with the exception of the first one and maybe the most recent couple, is they are not really plot-driven movies. They are sort of special effecty movies, and you have to find a way to make that appealing to a large audience and kind of charming, because that is what the original one is. It's a very charming characters that are anthropomorphized. The Godzilla in that TriStar movie looks fucking awful. He looks like a giant dinosaur,
unbelievably stupid design. I don't
Yeah.
understand. All you have to fucking do is just, I don't know, update it to modern standards. Like the Heisei Godzilla suit is pretty cool. And when I say suit, I mean they make a new one for every movie, but they're fundamentally the same. And like the Godzilla that they made here is so different.
It's unrecognizable.
And that's the thing is, like, even, decade to decade, Godzilla remains mostly unchanged. Like,
Yeah,
you get a little bit more detail.
Ping pong ball eyes.
Googly eyes going everywhere.
Fucking love his googly eyes.
But this movie, he does not look like fucking Godzilla. I mean, I think that was part of it, too, is like everybody went with a certain expectation. And we got that. And then we got Hank Azaria and his weird fucking accent. What a bummer. But anyways, yeah. So Toho is horrified by this because, like, in order to sort of license Godzilla, you have to, like, first of all, you have to have a lot of money and you have to, like, abide by certain very strict rules that the company puts out in order to sort of present it over here, which I think is why, like, the new ones, the sort of, like, MonsterVerse movies are just, like, American versions of the originals. Like, Godzilla and all the other different monsters look pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But they're horrified by this, and so they're like, we cannot let the Americans have the last word on this. And so they drag Godzilla out for another era, which is called the Millennium Era.
They're not good. These movies are not good.
This era features my favorite Godzilla designs, like the suit design, but the movies are not very good.
You and I have wildly different favorite Godzilla suit designs.
You love the very goofy, silly one where he's like jumping up and down and dancing. His eyeballs are like springing all over the place.
I love when he's like, put up your dukes. He's like doing that thing. It's fucking great.
I do find that very charming. He does a bit of that in this movie.
Yep.
But I like the ones where he's much more like monstrous, and that's how Godzilla looks over this. Also, the Millennium movies brought Godzilla back to being more of a threat,
which I also don't like.
Yeah, I do because it sets him up, and I think it works best with the two Mechagodzilla movies that they made in that series because those two fucking rule.
Yeah,
they're so fucking good.
I will admit those ones are pretty good because the Mechagodzilla is really cool in that one.
Extremely awesome monster design. Yeah. And like a lot of real anime shit, like missile packs that kind of like go out in every direction and then home in on the target. I love that.
I'll say cool. I don't mind him as if he's gonna be a villain, I don't mind him as a metaphorical villain. Like I thought I mean, we talked about it a little bit last year when it came out, but -1 I thought was one of the best movies of the year. It is an incredible film just in general. And the Godzilla in that is so fucking cool looking. You don't see him that often, but when you do, he's awesome looking. And he's fine as a villain in that because they're using him to say something. Otherwise, I think if you're just going to make these big action movies, he's just more fun as a kind of anti-hero. Because he's always so put upon in everything.
Especially this one.
Oh, yeah. When he's just like, these fucking jerks again.
Yeah. So anyways, the Millennium Era comes to an end in 2004 with a movie called Final Wars. Fucking sucks.
Oh.
It is a hectic freakout that is, first of all, it's really long. And it also features about 2/3 just people arguing with one another. And then, like, there's a big sort of, like, brawl throwdown in the middle. And that's kind of it. And there's a King Ghidorah.
That's what sucks about that era is that they really tried to go for plot-driven shit. And it's like, nobody fucking cares. That's not why we're here.
Yeah. So while this is going on in Japan, Legendary Pictures kicks up their own MonsterVerse with varying degrees of failure and success, and marks a hard shift away from Toho with their whole suitmation thing, that being a person wearing a giant monster suit, obviously, towards something more closely meets modern expectations of an all VFX motion capture monster. I'm on the fence about these movies. I don't like the first one at all. I think the middle two are pretty good, and I didn't see the last one.
I'm going to tell you what. I went into the last one expecting absolute dog shit, and it is really fun. It is a fun movie. It is stupid, but it is an action-packed film.
I'm well known for loving a stupid action-packed movie.
Yeah, I was like, I was a big fan. I walked away with big whole waving my flag high.
Yeah, I have one big bone to pick with them, in that in the Godzilla vs. King Kong one, the Mecha Godzilla design is garbage. Unbelievably fucking garbage.
Yeah.
They ought to be ashamed of themselves.
That's felt like it may be a little bit of an afterthought.
Yeah. It's not too hard to do a cool like Mecha Godzilla design, and they fucking blew it.
There's also like a million spin-off series. Like there's that Godzilla SOS. There's that Monarch series.
Oh yeah. I have
Single
not seen
Point Godzilla.
I've not seen all of Monarch.
I got about halfway through it.
Yeah. But yeah, the current era is called Reiwa, and it primarily features two movies: Shin Godzilla, which is great, and Godzilla -1, which is also great.
Yes.
But they also include a bunch of like the animated features that they did in this, and I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, if we're talking like the 70s cartoon, great. Love it.
No, like the modern anime stuff that was on Netflix, I didn't watch any of it.
Yeah, that's that
I
Single
probably ought
Point.
to.
I watched a couple episodes. It's not that. I mean, I'm not an anime person, so I'm not a good judge of it, but I didn't much care for it.
I'm not. I don't know. The Netflix anime has a certain look about it that I don't particularly care for. I don't know.
And that
what it
one
is.
has a very strange character. Like all the characters have very odd designs to them. Like there's one with I don't know if it's like what are like the larger generic names for what Jet Jaguar is? It's
like a mecha.
Yeah, and he looks a little bit like a TikTok from A Return to Oz. Like he's very portly.
I don't care for that because
way.
I like my Jet Jaguar being a lean little robot dude.
Yeah, it's a very strange design, and I just couldn't really get into it.
Yeah, so this is probably the most creatively fertile period since the original Showa series. But Toho seems to be playing a deliberately conservative game so as not to overexpose Godzilla. As the death knell of each prior era. If you look at each timeline, they get shorter and shorter. Japan does, in fact, love its big cranky guy. But in each era, Toho races to get a new movie out annually. And predictably, fewer and fewer people show up for each next one. They mothball the whole thing, and it takes a few years to get it back on track.
Yeah, it is diminishing returns as the series rolls on. And I love all of the Showa movies, but like by the time you get to the end, it is like half plots that are like weird, like romance stories. And then they just kind of drag out the same people. It's like when they're putting like, who's like a really, John Carradine. It's like, you just kind of drag out your old characters and prop them up in the corner, shoot some missiles at them and go home.
Also, they're like each one gets a much more prominently featured little boy who's like 8 years old and wearing tiny shorts, who spends the whole time just like cheering Godzilla on and like yelling "Yatta," and it's like get that fucking kid out of here.
I mean,
I cannot stand this shit.
It's particularly bad in it was Monsters All Out Attack. So he's really, really obnoxious in that because he's like the main character. Or the one in is it Gigan?
Is that the one with Baby Godzilla?
No, that's All Out Attack.
Okay.
Gigan is the one with Jet Jaguar.
Oh yeah, okay.
He's really awful in that. There's a very similar thread in the Gamera movies because Gamera is a friend to all the children. So
it's full of meat.
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, they eventually just start really slumming it, and when they're like, it is just shameless that they're like, "Here, kids, this is for you."
I know. Don't care for them. That's why I move away from the later Showa ones. Most Godzilla suits have a production name or a nickname for the crew. This suit was called Mosugoji, which is a portmanteau of Mothra and Gojira.
Okay.
Yep.
This is the first time they reused one.
Yeah. Except the head is different because I guess it got all banged up in the last one.
Yeah,
so
well, that gave them an opportunity to give him some new fantastic eyes, which I, for one, think is a great idea.
Yeah, I think this is the first time like his eyes move.
Yes,
which is
he has remote control eyes, and I love it because they're kind of he's like wall-eyed most of the time, and they're kind of all over the place. But that's what really allows him to give that like, would you get a load of these guys? Kind of look that he always has. He's like a real disappointed dad most of the time. Like, oh God.
Yeah. Yep. So it was reused in this movie, made the same year. This movie was also made the same year as Godzilla vs. Mothra. And the same suit was also used a bit in Ebirah, Horror of the Deep.
Mm-hmm. And it was this movie wasn't supposed to be made at all. Like they were supposed to make a movie called Redbeard that I've never heard of. But it was supposed to be like their big holiday movie. And I believe Honda was making that as well. And it fell way behind on schedule, and it was not going to come out. And they were like, "Well, fucking do something because you owe us a holiday movie." And he was like, "Oh yeah, holiday movie, Godzilla." And they were
right, because I think this is the year that Godzilla as a holiday movie, that tradition begins. Because all these Godzilla movies, they come out at the end of the year every year until like they stop making them, basically.
So that was why. So they really rushed this thing into production because it was like 8 months after Mothra that this one came out.
Let's see. And the last time that they used this particular suit is barely disguised as a different monster when used in an episode of Ultraman.
Ooh.
Yeah, you can look it up. There's like a bunch of Godzilla Wikipedias. Like you can look up the Mosugoji suit, and it'll show you like all of the different ways it was used. And the one in Ultraman is like they put like a ruffled collar around his neck, and that was it. Like he's still got the spines. He's still recognizably Godzilla.
He's just like a more fancy Godzilla. Like he comes out and he's like, "Oh, look at me! I'm here to give you lessons in diction."
He's a very fancy Godzilla.
I mean, that's what I imagine a fancy Godzilla would do. That's not how a lady holds her spoon.
Nope. Salad forks go on the outside. So this is the first movie begins to cast Godzilla not as a destroyer, but as a friend to humanity. Shows up and fights a bad monster. Almost immediately and predictably, Godzilla became a favorite among young boys who almost immediately became a subplot of most Godzilla movies. Just like we said, from this movie on, there's almost always an 8-year-old boy in tiny, tiny shorts cheering on Godzilla from the distance.
Now, let me ask you this. So, obviously, the first one is a very different tone. It is also a movie made mostly for adults. Do you think that the shift away, which is probably, it was inevitable. It's a giant fucking monster. You can't do much more than the first one with it. But do you think the shift away from it has diluted the original intention of Godzilla? Do you think, because it seems like not a lot of people understand what the first one is.
I think the answer to that is yes and no. Because for a really, really long time, particularly when I started to when I got into the 90s and started trading tapes, and I realized that there was this whole like series of Godzilla movies that just never made it over here, and I started to devour them very, very hungrily, and I got really, really into those and very excited about them. Completely fucking forgot about like the entire like sort of like the origin story and what it's really what the first movie is about, and just got carried away and caught up with all the monster antics, which I think is just sort of evident in the fact that like for a really long time the monster brawls and throwdown movies are massively popular, until they're not. But then recently, within I would say the last like 20 years, there's been a sort of reevaluation, probably when like Criterion started to take Godzilla a little more seriously, and you got these.
Well, that's just because they bought the whole Janus archive.
Yeah, and so we get these sort of reappraisals at people looking at it going like, well, yeah, it's a giant monster movie, and sure, that's very silly, but like, here's the context for this. And so it came back, and then really, I think Godzilla -1 and to some degree Shin Godzilla kind of brought it back to what Ishiro Honda intended originally, with movies that made Godzilla really kind of about something else.
Well, -1, I think, really flipped the script in a way that was incredibly smart and gives like the whole thing like new dimension. But I was able to find, because obviously finding reviews for this is very difficult, because there is an American version of this, but it is not quite the same film. It's mostly the same.
Doesn't hit quite the same. The Raymond Burr parts really kind of take away.
Oh no, that's the first one. But there's an American version of this movie we're talking.
Oh shit! Okay.
They make slight
with
changes.
An American cast and stuff.
I think it's the same cast. It's different dubbing. They changed some of the plot a little bit. Not much. Okay. It's mostly the same story, but they swap a few things out. But I was able to find one review for this movie by Vincent Canby, New York Times.
Right, sweet.
My girl, Vincent Canby. And he says, This fascination on the part of contemporary Japanese filmmakers with the destruction of their land by fantastic prehistoric forces only 20 years after Hiroshima might be of interest to social historians. The film, otherwise, is strictly for the comic book set. And the reason I asked you that question, and the reason I wanted to quote this specifically, is that what I think Vincent Canby is missing is that these movies are not about the destruction of their country and landscape by fantastic beasts. The fantastic beasts are a metaphor for American aggression. And so he seems to be removing the American part of the story. And what they don't really do much of in the first one is they make sort of oblique references to where the bombs came from. They do not say, there's not a lot of like accusations or sort of direct political charges made in the movie. And that's probably very strategic.
Oh, well, okay. There are reasons for that. And a lot of it has to do with the treaty that we signed with Japan at the end.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, it's obvious why they don't do it in the movie for a variety of reasons. But I think he seems, by this point, this is the fifth movie, and Canby seems to be missing, like, it's not just the destruction of Japanese land. It's the effect that had on Japan as a culture, not just the landscape. And so it's like, with each time they make these movies, they get further and further away from this idea that like, this was a way to process trauma. And they sort of, like, he seems to miss completely, like, it is about, sort of global affairs. It's not just like dumb monsters destroying the landscape because they don't know what to do with the bomb.
Yeah, he's definitely missing a sort of broader context. A lot of it having to do with that he's an American and he's not a Japanese person. It's also 1965 or 66 or whenever when he's reviewing this movie. So he probably has not seen the other ones at that point. Right.
It's an abstract question.
They're still kind of dealing with it, but like it wasn't just the bombs that really fucked with the Japanese at the end of the war. I mean, obviously, those were horrific events that really left their mark. But
I think this is what -1 does.
The defeat of the nation, the end of the empire, it really. After the war, their movies reflected a very wounded national spirit, and there was a lot of sort of fantasy about sort of returning to Imperial Japan that came through mostly through the samurai movies. But there was also a lot of stuff like this, and also, I mean, the Shinobi no Mono movies that I mentioned before also were reactions to that sort of wounded sense of
it's American it's movies post-Vietnam.
Yes, exactly. It was a defeat. They were a nation that could not be beaten. They were conquerors, and then all of a sudden they were fucking brought low by a technology that nobody saw coming. Like their movies for decades, like we're dealing with this in different ways.
And I think just dealing with violence more broadly. I mean, if you watch pretty much anything made from like the mid-60s, early to mid-60s through the 80s, their movies are extremely violent.
Yeah. They kind of address a sort of like underlying social condition that I am in no position to fucking diagnose.
No, and that I think
something's going on there.
That's why when we talked about doing these, I was like, I know fuck all about Japanese culture. Everything I know about it is in the context of these films and maybe some samurai movies.
That's the thing. It's like everything I know is just through like historical epics and fucking like what I know about World War II and shit. So, I want to tread lightly there, but like. These movies do kind of put this shit on the surface, and as an outsider, it's not kind of hard to see what everybody is struggling with at the time, and like that's usually what countries do, or cultures do when they are kind of going through something. Like America in the 80s, post-Vietnam, the depths of the Cold War, like our shit got very dark and really fucking weird and like flag wavy.
Or just straight up anarchistic and nihilistic.
Yeah. You see that, like, what was it? In the earlier part of, like, the aughts, like, Korea was kind of going through something as well. And all of a sudden, their movies turn bleak and super fucking dark and really violent, but also really fucking interesting.
Well, I told you, I watched, what was the one I watched the other night? The Cure. When I watched it, it was a really great movie. I'd never seen it before. And I was like, God damn it, Japan. Is everything all right? Like,
No, oh my God. And I don't know what it is. I think it has to do with a very sharp economic turn that happened to Japan in the 90s. Because it's not just that. Like, a lot of their horror movies in the 90s become very abstract and very, very fucking disturbing. That is until The Ring comes along and everybody suddenly jumped on that. But, like,
Or just,
prior
like,
to that,
read any Murakami book, and it's like, what the fuck is this? And it's like, this is his attempt to, like, deal with, like, weird trauma, like a kind of, like, high level trauma. You're like, really? Because it seems like a story about a jazz playing cat who loves spaghetti.
have you read 1Q84?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
I went through a period where I read most of his books.
That one is a fucking trip. And I think it's mostly about the Aum Shinrikyo events.
Yes. Well, that was
Maybe.
that's what motivated him to write it. But his whole perspective was, we as a country refuse to talk about trauma. And like, he was sort of being like, this is what happens when you can't talk about trauma. Like, shit just explodes everywhere. And he got, like, I think kind of a lot of blowback for that, because they were like, how dare you criticize us? And it's like, are you kidding me? 6 people died. You all lost your fucking mind. 6 people die here every fucking 3 hours.
I don't know. America looking at Japan just being like, get the fuck over it.
If I wrote an 1,100 page book every time that happened, I'd be writing 24/7.
Yeah. All right. We've been dancing around it. Shall we jump into this monster
We
bash?
should. You know what? Because this movie has everything. It has action. It has monsters. It has a weird brother-sister pseudo-romance.
It's got fairies
It has tiny fairies.
who sing. Aren't they delightful?
They are. I fucking love them.
Yeah. Okay. So we open at 2 a.m. on the sleepy streets of Tokyo with a series of moody cityscapes. Settling on a rooftop UFO club, or maybe it's a UFO cult. Their intensity makes it really hard to distinguish, if I'm being honest. They are awaiting communication from another planet, but when it never comes, they blame the unbeliever.
And
Who is
listen, they do this shit all the time in these movies where someone's just like, these aliens could never be real. And it's like, really? A giant fucking lizard emerges from the sea to fuck you up every 8 months, and yet aliens can't be real?
But also, the thing that I completely failed to mention, Toho plays fast and loose with continuity in this series.
Oh, yeah.
There are, within the eras, there are movies that are like, this is a direct sequel to all of the movies that came before it. And then the next movie will come out and everybody will be like, what's a Godzilla?
Yeah, they're like, Godzilla? Never heard of him.
Yeah.
I don't know her.
Or there's some that just sort of blow away everything that came before it except the very first one. And it's really, really hard to tell it depends on who's writing it and who's directing it. This one takes place directly after like all of the ones that came before.
It's like David Gordon Green's Halloween. Who knows what's going on anymore?
So yeah, we got Naoko. She's the unbeliever. She was sent by a company called Myths of the 20th Century. It's like a TV show to interview the cult. But because the aliens never show, it simply follows that they must have detected her unbelieving mind and stayed away.
You know what? Because she's a woman.
That's it.
Because she's a sassy woman.
But it's definitely a little weird that they're having a heat wave in the middle of winter, isn't it?
I love this because this is a very early mention of like, hey, it seems warmer around here these days, doesn't it? Like, it's a very like climate change, because climate change begins to play a pretty big part in this series eventually.
Oh yeah, because Godzilla's always getting frozen and then thawed out later on or something.
There's a reason why he is always pissed. He comes out of the sea every 2 years and he is so weary. He is so put upon by these people.
Yep. They're about to pack it in for the night when one of the cult people spots a series of meteors falling. And also, like, I think it's coming up, but like, Shindo, her brother, is like, there's an epidemic going on as well. And I'm like, what is happening in this fucking country right now? So Shindo sees them, the the meteors at the police station when he's talking to one of his friends. There's some commentary in there about an epidemic going on amid all of this like fucking climate change stuff. When his boss comes in, Shindo is informed that he's going to be bodyguard for this visiting princess, Salna. She's hiding out of
And then his boss takes a picture of her out of like his wallet.
Just carries it around. Keeps
I
it
was
close
like,
to
why
his
is
heart.
he carrying this woman's picture around? Like, we watched something recently where there's like, oh, hey, I've got a picture of her right here. And it's like, why do you have a picture of this random woman?
Right. Yeah, so she's going to be hiding out in Japan until a plot to assassinate her blows over. So now over in Selna, we see some palace intrigue between a couple of dudes in ruffled collars.
Oh, real fancy. Real fancy.
I love the collars. I love when they do like other countries in these movies where they're like, these places are very exotic. So like, this is how they dress.
Yeah, we'll put this one under the ocean for some reason. That's in the next one.
They've planted a device on the princess's plane, which we then cut to. Now, the princess talks to her retainers, and then we see a flash in the sky from inside the plane, and it hypnotizes her, and it tells her to leave the plane, which she does.
It says flee, and I was like, she's on a fucking airplane. We need flee.
She opens the door and just steps out, and then the fucking plane explodes.
Now, listen, y'all, this is still within, like, this is pretty early
This is not even 10
history of
minutes in.
commercial air travel. And they have just blown up a plane. This is a thing that people were terrified of throughout most of the late 50s and into the 60s. This is a film ostensibly for children.
Yep. Plane explodes, and then we see one of the meteors crash into the mountains.
And I will say the matte paintings in this are really, really fucking good. I mean, the miniatures and models that they use are also like they all have like working doors and windows and shit. Like everything.
Oh yeah, like
is
there's
real good.
There's one where we see a helicopter flying around. Like you can see the guys inside it moving.
Yeah, and I think some of this is actually shot on location in certain places, and maybe it just might have been just B-roll or whatever. But like, most of this is in a studio, and it's pretty fucking impressive.
The attention to detail is incredible. Yeah. So now, sometime soon after, a geological team shows up to investigate the crash site. And they do a lot of hiking, reach a spot where the compasses all start fucking up. And then they find the place they're looking for eventually, discover that it's the meteor is fully intact and demonstrates a magnetic pull on all of their metal equipment. So the next day at work, Shindo is informed that the princess blew up, so don't sweat the bodyguard detail. It's all good.
Don't worry about it. Oh, this is when this is when he takes up the picture. Like, well, this is who you would have been protecting had she not exploded.
Yeah. But what's this? Naoko's boss excitedly comes in with tapes and a recorder for Naoko because something exciting is happening in town. You see, a prophet has appeared.
Yeah, big news, everybody. There's a crazy lady pontificating in the park.
Just ranting. And she has drawn a fucking crowd.
She really has. Like, she's got more listeners than we do.
Yeah. And they do all the usual non-believer shit. Then
Yeah,
Naoko
one of them
shows
yells,
up.
"How about a strip show?" It's like, Jesus fucking Christ,
There's
buddy.
also an entire uniformed baseball team in the audience.
For
just,
some
like,
reason, yeah.
harassing this lady.
How about a strip show? It reminds me of the time I went to see Kay Hanley, and she was like 7 months pregnant. Some guy in the fucking audience yells, "Show us your tits." And she stopped the song and she just goes, "Hey, why don't you show me your tits first?"
Fucking classy.
That's an anecdote from my life.
Yeah. So, Naoko shows up, interviews the prophet, who says that they're from Venus. And then we finally see her from the front. We see that it's Princess Selna, who somehow survived her fall from an airplane.
And is dressed like a moppet.
Yep. She's
Nice like old sweepy.
She's just predicting a disaster at Mount Aso. So now we cut to Mount Aso, where tourists have gathered around the edge of the volcano. And a scientist informs us that everything's fine. It's all good. Nothing terrible could ever happen at Mount Aso. So at home, we find out that Naoko and Shindo are brother and sister, living with their mother, who loves to watch What Are They Doing Now on television. So on this,
Did you watch what was that BoJack Horseman?
No, I've not watched
Where
it.
Mr. Peanut Butter eventually gets his own talk show, or it's like a quiz show, and it's called Celebrities. What do they know? Do they know stuff? Let's find out. That's essentially what she's watching, and it is the most tame Japanese television program I've ever seen. Like,
it is
shouldn't they
for
be
housewives.
They should be eating garden slugs and jumping over bottomless pits or some shit. Like, this is not any Japanese TV I've ever seen.
So on this episode, two very young boys in very tiny shorts, which were the style at the time,
Tied an onion on his belt. That's two.
are brought out and asked who they'd like to see again. Their answer, Mothra. So they
Fair.
can't bring out.
She's very pretty.
They can't bring out Mothra, but they can bring out the Shobijin, who the subtitles in any given Mothra movie always call the fairies.
Now,
Shobijin
again, we
means
can't believe in aliens, but we can believe in two tiny ladies on a flying carpet.
Of course we can. Yep. So yeah, they the Shobijin, by the way, it means little beauties.
I don't know how I feel about that.
That
feels real like kitty beauty pageant to me.
I
don't like
Frank's
that.
little beauties.
And also, I feel like the Peanuts are awfully accommodating of humans who routinely try to capture or otherwise abuse them.
That's like the fucking plot of like 3 of the movies they're in. So they come all the way from Infant Island, which I'll never not laugh at.
No.
Floating into the set on a flying carpet, settle in to answer some burning questions about Mothra. So yeah, the fairies are played by sisters Yumi and Emi Ito, who were a musical duo called the Peanuts, one of the first groups to be properly labeled J-pop. Mm-hmm. They crossed over into American pop culture briefly around the same time as this movie when they appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. Naturally, they always perform a couple of musical numbers when they're in the movie, like right now.
And listen, the Mothra theme song, the song they use to call Mothra, is a jam.
It's a good song, man.
Yeah. And it's another one. They get a lot of fucking mileage out of that song.
Because we're going to hear it again later on. Hope you liked it the first time. So, as they're singing, we take a telepathic journey to Infant Island, where the natives worship the one remaining larval Mothra in a cave. And if
because
you're just joining us,
Mothra dies a bunch. And that is part of the cycle. Is she dies off.
Yeah, the Mothra dies in the first movie, and then there's 2 larval Mothras, and
Good
then
swimmers.
they're the ones who show up in the next one, and one of them turns into Mothra. I think the other one remains a worm. And then by the time this one shows up, they're like, "How's Mothra doing?" And they're like, "Well, they're pretty good, except one of them died, so we've only got one."
So not great, but better than both of them being dead.
Yeah, Mothra's got 2 forms. We got larval Mothra, which is the little worm. That basically, whenever you watch a Mothra movie, they're the wormy Mothra for most of the time, and then they turn into awesome Imago Mothra at the end, which is the super colorful one that looks like a moth and shit with the colorful wings and stuff. I love that. Unfortunately, not in this movie.
Yeah, you're not gonna get it in this. What I like about this moment is that Mothra is kind of like swaying along to the song.
Oh yeah, Mothra loves the song.
Like this is
loves
like,
what they sing.
Oh, that's my song. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So back at home, Shindo rather violently manhandles his sister after some light joking, and then cracks the newspaper, shocked to see Princess Salna as the prophet in the paper.
It's like a weird. There's something very juvenile about their relationship, and I think it's supposed to be like, oh, they're brother and sister. Isn't that cute? And it's like, no, because they're like 30 years old. It's a little bit weird that he's so petulant, actually.
I know. Oh yeah, and also they take the picture of the princess and they sort of like superimpose it over the picture of the prophet. So just in case you haven't connected the dots yet. So they also got the paper in Selgina, which is the princess's home country, and whoever this dude with the ruffled collar is, he'd like to know what she's doing in the paper, and asks the assassin Malmes what the deal is.
And listen, my note says, it's a shame we don't wear ruffled collars anymore.
Because this guy, here's the thing, I don't know what they're doing over there in Selgina, but like they're wearing ruffled collars and then like suits.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really zhuzhes up an outfit.
Yeah, so Malmes puts together some goons, and off they go to Tokyo to figure out just what the hell is going on here. So now, Nako's producer at Myths of the 20th Century is planning on a whole series about this prophet lady.
Which is really, he's really rolling the dice on some crazy lady in the park.
They're like, she's all the rage. She's gonna do like she's gonna be the next big thing. But by this point, like nothing that she has predicted has happened yet.
Yeah, she's just some crazy person ranting in the park.
And she is super crazy because her affect is robotic and weird. Her voice is very sleepy.
I can go mile. I could go outside right now, go a mile in either direction, and find you 5 of them.
I guarantee. I walk down the end of the block here. I'll find you a prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Shindo meanwhile takes it upon himself to investigate her to see if she's the real deal. And now, in the city, Shindo and Naoko meet up with a guy named Professor Miura, who is in town on break from investigating the meteor to give Naoko the story for her show about the meteor.
This is when he says, when he comes upon her, she says, "I'm on a stakeout." He says, "That isn't ladylike language." And I was like, what about being on a stakeout is not ladylike language?
Yeah, they go to a bar, and
what the fuck does that even mean?
All 3 of them order Blue Mountain. And I want to know what a Blue Mountain is.
It's cheer wine. That's what it is.
They got taste, that's why.
Japanese cheer wine.
Yeah. So reporters on the bar television appear with a story about the prophet being all up on Mount Aso, warning people to get away because something terrible is about to happen.
And once again, everybody refuses to believe that giant monsters could return, even though it's the 5th entry in the franchise.
Rodan is reviving, is what she says. So then the wind blows some dumbass's hat off, and then he goes down into the crater.
This movie really bangs along, doesn't it?
It really does. I think for like 15 minutes into the movie at this point. And also this guy loses his hat. Everybody's like, you fucking idiot.
It really is. And then the other guy's like, hey, I'll give you $50 if you go get my fucking stupid hat.
Yeah, one of the weirdos on the scene, he offers to go down to get it for the yen equivalent of about $5. So
this episode is going to be terrible. I'm sorry, everybody. This was my idea.
He gets to the bottom and he gets the hat. And then the nearby rubble stirs and Rodan emerges and flies away as everyone flees.
And he's looking, I got to tell you, Rodan is looking not so menacing in this film.
That suit looks like they didn't even bother to dust it off.
Rodan is sort of my least favorite.
Definitely one of my least favorite monsters.
He doesn't even do anything.
Nah. All he does is he flaps his wings and he blows you away. That's it. And he pecks you on the head.
Yeah, he's just like a bird.
Yeah. Gust of wind from his wings trashes nearby buildings, in case you forgot what Rodan does. So now Malmas and his guys arrive in the city and shack up at a quiet hotel, they say. While back on Mount Aso, the geological team resume their study of the meteor, which has begun to glow red and no longer attracts metal items. Now, the ferries are getting ready to sail back to Infant Island. They're addressing the press crowd. Before they do, as delightful as they are, when the prophet shows up, just out of nowhere, warning everybody that the ship must not sail. Luckily, Naoko's there, talk her down and get her out of hot water when the ship's captain arrives. He's like, I didn't allow her back on there.
This is when the chief pulls out yet another picture of the woman, and it's like, why does everybody have pictures of this lady?
Also, how many of those do you have? Like, what are you doing?
And this one's even bigger. This is like an 8x10.
It's a fucking it's
a headshot.
Glamour shots 8x10.
Yeah.
Shindo, meanwhile, found the princesses.
He takes her to the hotel. This is when she takes her to the hotel, like hide her or whatever. And the guy at the front desk goes, "Oh, are you doing a story on the homeless? You shady motherfucker."
That fucking classist asshole. And he's like fucking twisting his fucking face up in disgust. Yeah, fuck you. You're getting paid.
Yeah. Also, she looks great. The fuck are you talking about?
I know, that hat looks good on her, man. Anyway, Shindo, meanwhile, found the princess's missing bracelet. A fisherman is trying to sell it, so they bring him in and question him. He says that he fished a woman out of the sea. She traded her bracelet for his hat, jacket, and pants. Shindo and his boss are puzzled by how someone could survive falling out of an airplane, so they go to the only person who can explain. The chief of the UFO cult, who explains to us like we're a bunch of fucking idiots that there's a gap between dimensions, and she simply fell into that gap, which saved her life. Or something.
Look, people have fallen out of planes and lived. So it happens, okay? Get over it.
Though this is something that Godzilla movies do from time to time. They make some sci-fi shit up completely, and then they present it to the audience as though, of course you fucking know about this stuff. Makes me crazy every time. They do it in Final Wars quite a bit.
Oh, that one's terrible.
Yeah. So Naoko takes the princess to a quiet hotel and checks her in. And so matters are made all the worse when they arrive at their room, and they're only a few doors down from Malmess and his goons who
Now
see
look,
her.
this is when they change the princess out of her chic urban outfit and they put her in this dour funeral garb.
Yeah. When they're in the room, Naoko calls the station to check in. The princess telepathically detects someone hidden in the room. And when she moves Naoko's bag, we find the fairies are also hidden out in the room, having taken the princess's advice from earlier about not getting on the ship. Why that is? Well, we cut to the sea just in time to see our big cranky boy Godzilla rising out of the sea ahead of the ship, which he just roasts with his atomic breath.
Yep, but just like me, he wakes up and starts setting things on fire.
Back on Mount Aso, big things are happening with the meteor, which is also growing in size. All the boys think that there's a monster inside, and they're not wrong. Very suddenly, and to the accompaniment of a theremin, all the metallic gears suddenly drag to the meteorite again. Now back at the hotel, Naoko goes down to the lobby to meet her brother. While she's away, Malmess's men pick the lock and enter. They interrogate her, but she won't give it up. She's from Venus, she insists, and they're all about to kill her when the fairies shut the lights off and then warn Shindo and Naoko as they enter the room.
Yeah, just a reminder for everybody, this is a children's movie, and we are about to watch a woman get stabbed to death.
Everybody starts shooting guns all over the place, and then in the chaos, Malmess and his guys get out the window, leaving the princess behind.
Sitting in the fireplace for some reason.
Yep, just reading a book about amnesia.
Reading a book in the dark.
Yep. Things get even worse as Godzilla wanders in from the sea, blowing shit up in the harbor on his way.
Now look, this is my, as we have established, this is my favorite look for Godzilla. This is when they give him these sort of like big Kermit the Frog mechanical eyes, and he just always is like flailing around. He's always looking so exasperated, as if to be like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah. He's just flailing his arms wildly.
I mean, and I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe he's my favorite. Like, I feel like a kind of kinship with him. Because I spend most of my time just being like, God damn it!
Godzilla is just your spirit animal.
Kind of.
Yeah. Then things get even worse as Rodan flies in to piss Godzilla off. So then the public goes apeshit, pointing at the sky and fleeing as Godzilla chases Rodan out of town, yelling, screaming, and carrying on.
It really is. He may as well be swatting at him with a newspaper, like a giant fly swatter.
So Shindo and Naoko take the princess out to the country to see a psychologist who will hopefully be able to get to the bottom of her delusions. He's got all these treatments he plans on testing out on her. But before they get very far, she's up and ranting again, warning about the arrival of King Ghidorah, who will kill everything on Earth. And then we learn that there used to be people on Venus, but Ghidorah killed them all. Now, out near Mount Fuji, Godzilla and Rodan finally have it out. Rodan sweeps in, knocks Godzilla off his feet, where he thrashes around on the ground for a while, screaming. It's pretty good. Out at Mount Aso, the meteor.
Oh, that's when he starts kicking rocks at him.
Yeah, the meteor finally cracks open, releasing the golden-scaled three-headed monster King Ghidorah.
Who's just like, now it's worth pointing out, it took anywhere between like 10 and 20 people to operate this suit, including the person inside of it. And
Jesus Christ.
It's just like constantly looks like he's just kind of flailing around, like he's kicking his little feet, like his heads are flying everywhere.
Oh yeah, all three heads are just constantly like flopping all over the place.
Yeah,
it's my favorite quality. I think that's why I like the character as much as he is because everybody's like, oh shit, here comes King Ghidorah, it's on now. Like a real bad guy is gonna come along. He's got that funny little cry, and his heads are just like all over the fucking place.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's your big bad guy?
And he's just like kicking his feet everywhere. It's like, you could tell it's like someone's just holding him up and he's like, eh.
Yep. So now at some city council meeting, local government people press the military for a plan, and the military assures them that they have it all under control. Like they always do.
Yeah, they do not have it under control.
Nope. They even
I don't know why they even bother building cities anymore.
I know, every time there's one of these movies, Godzilla comes out of the sea, and they do the same fucking thing. The JSDF rolls out all of their artillery and their tanks, and they get those maser cannons to go out, and they shoot at Godzilla, and it does nothing. But they still bring all their crap out.
Yeah, and they keep doing the same fucking thing every time. They're like, well, don't shoot him with electricity, and then they do exactly that.
Yeah. So yeah, the military even floats the idea of using atomic weapons to stop them.
Now, I feel like that is a bad idea because I guess, like Vincent Canby, they also seem to have forgotten what started all of this.
Yeah. So Professor Mirai is there. And he has a cooler head about him, and he brings the fairies in to address the group. This is the scene where that meme comes from that says it may sound primitive and unscientific, but through the fairies, we could ask Mothra for help.
Fair. Yeah. And of course, also, like they bring them in, and they're always in like a box.
Yeah, they carry them around in a box.
And it's like, they can fly on a magic carpet. Why are you putting them in a box? It feels very infantilizing. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but still.
And most of the time throughout this movie, their job is to look in the same direction and kind of furrow their brows and look concerned at the same time.
Yeah, they have two modes. It's concerned or very self-satisfied.
And Naoko tells everybody where the princess is hiding out on television. Mm-hmm. So Malmess and his guys see it, and they hit the road to go get her.
She's a real shit journalist.
She's the fucking worst. She would definitely name her sources if pressed by the government.
I feel like there's always, like, there are very familiar components to these movies that they just sort of mix in with a kid with the tiny shorts and, big Godzilla and all these things. It wouldn't be a movie without Godzilla, but there's always like a dumb a journalist of some kind or a photographer.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why, but like Japanese movies at this time always have a very humorous element to them.
Sure. Yeah, like I think a
lot
of it
like
is
a Benny Hillish slapstick where you're like, oh, here's the fat photographer who falls down or whatever.
Right. What was the one that I was watching the other night that we were talking about that just had the most fucked up vibe to it? Was it Godzilla vs. Mothra?
Oh no, you watched War of the Gargantuas?
I watched that, and I watched a couple others. But yeah, War of the Gargantuas also has a really fucking strange vibe.
Yeah, like there's always a weird comedic element where I'm like, I don't get this at all.
Oh no,
Why is this
the one
funny?
that really threw me was King Kong vs. Godzilla, because that's the one that's like they're very, very seriously trying to kind of recapture the sort of epic scope of the original Godzilla movie. But yeah, there's a guy who's in it who's like fucking like throwing pies in people's faces.
Yeah,
and,
it's
like,
a real
slipping
like
on banana peels. Yeah, it's such a weird fucking movie because there's no like gradation into the funny shit. It's just like serious civic destruction, monsters going apeshit all over the place, and then like here's a guy playing a really funny beat on the drums.
Mm-hmm.
Just so goddamn weird. That's a good movie though. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't know if it's a good one.
The fairies will call Mothra, but unfortunately they don't think that she can do it alone. But if Mothra teams up with Godzilla and Rodan, they can maybe pull it off. And then Ghidorah shows up, starts fucking the place up with mouth lightning.
That is a big ask to get them to work together.
We gotta, first of all, we gotta have a sit down. We gotta talk to these guys. We gotta pull our efforts together. So
and listener, you might be thinking that's never gonna happen, but just you wait.
Oh my God,
it's gonna happen.
The craziest shit. Ghidorah's just flying all over the place, blowing everything up. So
what is his objective? Is he just pissed?
He just wants to kill everything.
All right, I get it.
Yeah. The fairies sing the Mothra song again.
It's great.
We go back to Infant Island. Oh, I love it every time. Every time. And we see Mothra getting ready to come out, even the score.
Listen, it starts like this. Mosura. Mosura. I don't speak Japanese, so that's about as far as I'm going to
go. It's not bad. That's pretty good. The doctor has the princess hypnotized, back in his lab, that is, and the person from Venus explains that the survivors of Ghidorah's attack fled to Earth in the final days and hid out among the rest of us, integrating. I don't know why this scene's even in it. This fucking goes nowhere. It means absolutely fucking nothing. She's still not her regular self, so the doctor suggests that they try shock treatment.
Hey, sometimes it works.
So the doctor sends Shindo down to the lab to set the power for the shock treatment to the max that he can safely use.
That doesn't seem like a good idea.
I know. What's this? Malmess and his clowns are there, and as soon as Shindo walks away, they crank the power to the max.
I kind of like this part, though.
It's a pretty good scene. If they deliver this voltage, it'll cook the princess. Thankfully, Godzilla and Rodan are here to fuck each other up.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor is about to fire up the machine, but Rodan drops Godzilla on some power lines and blacks out the entire village, saving her life.
Very convenient timing.
Shindo goes to check the power, runs into Malmes's guys. There's some more shooting. Shindo is outnumbered, but here comes Professor Mirai, who gets the drop on one of the goons and takes his gun, helping Shindo out, drive the goons out of the building. Godzilla and Rodan fight some more. There's more head pecking. Godzilla slaps Rodan down with his tail, grabs him, body slams him to the ground, just beating the crap out of Rodan with his tail. Then Rodan gets up, gets his tail in his mouth, and Godzilla's like, "What the fuck? This sucks."
And then Rodan starts laughing at him. And that just makes it worse. And he starts chucking rocks at him. It's like, nuclear fallout be damned. There's always time for whimsy.
Rodan flaps his wings to blow Godzilla away, create some space. But here comes Mothra. Godzilla's all kicking rocks at Rodan. Who's like, "Oh shit, I don't care for this at all."
And then they're like playing volleyball with the rocks for a while. But then Mothra kind of like jizzes in their face for something. Or
This is our second movie when jizz gets thrown in their face.
Oh god, in a row.
In a row. Mothra's there all, hey guys, come on, don't fight. Godzilla and Rodan are like, "Fuck that shit, dude," and they knock a big rock back and forth.
Yeah, because Godzilla, at this point, these bitches are always trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And he is just like, all I ever want to do is sleep.
Just want to fucking rest out
That's
here on
all I
Monster
ever want.
Island.
And now, and you're always beating me up. You're throwing things at me. You're
Shooting
trying
me
to
with
electrocute
missiles.
Mimi.
So Mothra shoots Godzilla with silk web stuff, and he's like, "Oh shit, this sucks. What the hell?" And then Rodan's over there laughing, actually laughing.
Yeah.
But then Mothra shoots him with the silky web stuff, and he gets it way worse than Godzilla. Godzilla's over there laughing too.
It's great.
So Godzilla sits down, literally chills out and takes a seat.
Yeah, like Indian style on the floor.
Rodan chills out too. And then Mothra gets up on a ridge and starts squeaking at them, trying to get the team up. And you might be saying, is Mothra speaking to them? Yes, Mothra is.
Yes.
And the fairies...
And Godzilla responds and says, "The humans are always bullying us."
Yep, he just wants to chill, but they're always shooting him with missiles.
And then Mothra says, "You have to apologize." And then Godzilla goes and bites his wing.
Yeah, so the fairies are translating the monster language for us. Godzilla's all like, "Why should I help these dicks?" And he actually does this thing where the humans are like, "So is it working?" And the fairies are like, "No." Godzilla says no. And then we cut to Godzilla, who's looking away at you, like away from us, like an angry dog. Like a dog who's like
so good.
Not like I'm gonna bite you, but like a dog that's like pissed off, like disappointed at you.
Yeah, and I understand it. He's like, how could you betray me like this?
Yeah, and then we cut over to Rodan. Rodan's like, "Bet." So King Ghidorah has shown up now, shoots the mountain with his mouth lightning, which causes a landslide that crushes Malmes's car, killing the goons, but Malmes lives, and he has a rifle. Now, Mothra's almost got them agreeing, but then Godzilla picks a fight with Rodan again, and they start, throwing down.
And this is when he literally runs. And watching Godzilla run is truly hilarious. He's very nimble in this movie.
He's got that big butt,
Yeah.
the big chubby legs.
Yep.
Yep. It's Mothra's
It's like watching
rousing...
a baby run.
It really is. Mothra's rousing speech fails to get them to cooperate, so she's like, "Fuck this shit, I'm gonna go do it myself." And goes to fight King Ghidorah, who just fucks her up immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing this, Godzilla's like, "No way, dude," and then runs in to fight Ghidorah, and then here comes Rodan with the backup. So now Rodan draws Ghidorah away so Godzilla can help Mothra get back in the fight, and throws some rocks at Ghidorah.
Yeah, there's a lot of rock throwing in this, which you don't see that in the newer movies.
No, those ones are like monster throwdowns. A lot of punching and kicking and clawing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the princess has wandered off to some cliff's edge for a final showdown with Malmes. She's trying to shoot her with a rifle, but here comes Shindo to shoot back. And then amid all the chaos, the princess gets her memory back, calls out to Malmes, but then she's like, "Where the hell am I? Who the hell are you?" And Shindo's all like, "Don't sweat that shit right now. I have to shoot this guy."
Yeah, Shindo's plan is, I'm just going to stand here in front of you and get shot.
Which does happen several times. Yep. Malmen shoots the gun out of Shindo's hand. Looks like he's got them both dead to rights, but then the monster fighting causes a collapse in the cliff above, and the debris knocks him off the cliff to his death.
Yeah, my note says, meanwhile, back at the silly monster brawl, Ghidorah is shooting electricity at Godzilla's crotch.
Back in the fight, Godzilla blasts Mothra away again and shoots Godzilla right in the business with mouth lightning. Then the three monsters gang up on Ghidorah, start wailing on him, but he nopes out, shakes him off, shooting Godzilla in the butt with mouth lightning.
That is literally what my next note says.
Does not care for that at all. Then Rodan's all like, hey Mothra, climb on my back. Which he does, and he hits Ghidorah with the silky web spray stuff, laying it on real thick. And Godzilla's there punching Ghidorah in all three faces before he grabs him by the tail. Meanwhile, all the people watching this are like, oh shit, our town is ruined. And it only gets worse when a landslide sweeps the whole village away. We get this panic shot of all the villagers crying.
Even when they're trying to help.
So then Godzilla throws Ghidorah, who's like, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. And he flies away back to space. The three friend monsters group up for one more shot as if to say, fuck out of here with that amateur shit.
I wish they had hugged each other.
I wish, yeah, like really like lean in. Go the distance like when Jet Jaguar shakes Godzilla's hand
So
at the
good.
end.
Best toys I've ever bought.
Oh, so great. And then we cut away to say goodbye to the princess who has to go back to her country, presumably deal with more assassinations.
Gotta jam in a little bit of romance there at the end for no particular reason.
Yep. Because we got to remember, it wasn't just Malmess who wanted her dead. And then the fairies ride away out to sea on the back of Mothra, saying goodbye to Godzilla and Rodan, who presumably never have beef again. I'm just fucking with you. They fight again in the next movie.
That's great.
Yeah. Roll credits.
And you know, I'll tell you what, every time I watch one of these movies, also, again, I'm really sorry, everybody. This was a goddamn mess. But every time
it's kind of hard to talk about because the plotting of Godzilla movies is always so clunky and shitty and very obviously written around a series of like big brawl, like throwdowns.
And they always try to jam in these like, you know, like a subterfuge and like espionage and romance. And it's like, nobody gives a shit about that.
Eventually, they'll start to kind of figure it out in the Heiseis, but even still, like, when they try to plot those during the 90s, those movies are every bit as just like...
Oh, yeah, no, they're even worse.
They're even like more wooden. There's like every now and then they'll get like a real sort of like celebrity actor to come in, and so they'll just like write around that actor to sort of showcase their other talents and shit. So fucking annoying. But this one front loads it. Like I feel like this one is... I like this movie quite a bit, but this one takes fucking forever to get rolling.
Yeah, I may have already said this, but like every time I put these on, I'm always like, this one sucks. And then I watch it and I'm like, that movie's actually pretty fun.
It's when they fight, like that's when these movies deliver. Like,
yeah,
that's really
especially because he's goofy as fuck, and he's kind of like Godzilla constantly has this like, oh, this jerk again, this kind of like look, this like real put upon, and he's just kind of like, oh, I don't want to do this, but he does. And they always make me want to watch another one, which I guess means they are very successful.
Oh, yeah. This week alone, I have watched like 6 Toho movies, all of them involving a giant monster of some kind. Like, not all of them Godzilla. Like, I watched some of the side ones. I watched Mothra. I watched War of the Gargantuas. Like, I have watched nothing but fucking Toho movies this week. So, like, yeah, it just feels natural to slide into the next one.
And I guess, like, that's a good segue, because my usual question here is, like, is this one successful at achieving its goals? And I think we just answered the question. It's like, I want to watch more of these. I always want to watch more of these.
Oh, yeah, when I'm done with this, I'm going to fucking pick another one until I've just, like, run out of them, I suppose. Like,
yeah, I have seen these movies so many fucking times, and yet if I go through periods where I will put on one and then I will inevitably watch 6 more of them in the days to follow. And I guess like whatever like serious social message they lose from the first one, I mean, it's a little bit shitty, but like they're fun and exciting, and like that is, I guess, the sign of a very successful franchise. It's like I finish one and immediately want to watch more. And, these movies are not in English for the most part. There's a couple of them you can get really kind of
I whenever I watch these, I insist on watching them in Japanese with the subtitles.
Yeah, the dubbing is usually really bad on these.
The dubbing is fucking terrible most often. And when they are in English, the English actors are so fucking bad. They're
Oh,
so
yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, they're awful. But like, they're in Japanese and you still don't have to pay that much. You could be playing on your fucking phone. You could be playing Candy Crush the whole time and just occasionally checking in and you will still know what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we could have, I suppose we couldn't have picked just anyone. Like I think this is definitely like an exceptional example of a proper Godzilla movie, but like most of them are like this. They're they're just fucking entertaining. They're really stupid, and if you're paying attention to them, the stupid parts tend to be a little bit of the draw. Like this movie's non-Godzilla stuff is just outrageous and ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like, what if the Marx Brothers made a movie, but it was a serious drama?
Yeah. No, these movies are fucking great. Like, I have favorites. Obviously, we talked about it up top. Like, I like the Heisei stuff just because they're much more elaborate. Special effects are way better, obviously. But these movies are also like silly and fun, and like I don't like it. It is, I suppose, weird that they kind of took a very somber movie about about a nation's trauma and kind of turned them into these carnival rides, but it doesn't really cheapen the original. Like the original is unchanged, and you can watch it really either way.
I mean, it has endured forever. It is the longest running franchise it has a Guinness Book of World Records, approval. It is the longest running franchise of all time. And I think that's for a reason. It is dumb and goofy and like super fun to watch. And
and a lot of it has to do with the fact, I mean, also, it's not just that it's like stupid and people in rubber suits fighting. The attention to detail in the miniatures, in the fucking matte paintings, in the special effects is crazy. Is fucking crazy. And so like there's also like an admiration of the craft that goes into this that there's no Western equivalent to these movies.
No, I was just trying to think of one, and I was like, I can't think of another series that would even remotely compare to this. But there is. I realize that there is a tendency, probably, I don't know if it's unique to Americans, but like the aversion to international films. And I encourage people to go watch just fuckloads of foreign movies, because the way that each culture comes at movies is so fascinating. And you can see it even in these goofy ass movies. Like there is a craft to Japanese films that is unrivaled by any other country. And I would say the same about Italian movies and American movies. Like everyone's doing different shit. And even in these dumbass Godzilla movies, you can see that there is such craft to what they do and they take such pride in it. It's super impressive.
Yeah. While you were talking, I did think of one that I could kind of compare into this is Reptilicus.
I watched that recently. It is nowhere near as good. Gorgo.
No. But what I really love about it is how it's such a community effort. It was made in Denmark, wasn't it?
I think it's a U.S. Denmark production.
Okay. But like it is so fucking cute, and they know exactly what they're doing. But like there is
it is low budget as hell.
It really is. And it's very, very silly. Definitely nowhere near the same fucking level as these Tohos, but comparable, I think, in the vibe and the sense that it has a very distinct cultural place for the location that it was made in.
Yeah.
But fucking Godzilla, man.
There's a British, the British movie Gorgo is the other kind
of. Oh,
the sort of Western knockoff. And that one I think is much better than Reptilicus. It has a lot more charm to it. But they're both kind of inferior when it comes to this, because these movies are extremely charming.
Yeah. Godzilla, man. The fucking best. Hey, what's coming up next?
Well, next week, Bring Me the Axe. It's going to be you, me, and a couple of friends talking about Scream. And then in 2 weeks, 99-cent rental. We'll be back. We're going to do a little compare and contrast of today's film with 1991's Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Now, if you liked this episode, you're gonna love whatever the hell we do next.
Oh yeah. That one, I think that's that Biollante is my favorite This one is probably my second favorite, and it's a very close second. It has an absolutely gonzo plot.
Yeah.
Like, the story that it is telling is fucking stupid and crazy. I can't wait to talk about it.
Well, come on back for some more nonsense next week.
Right. So, yeah, be back in a week as we take on Scream. I'm very excited. I can't wait to talk about that one. And then be back in 2 as we head back to Japan for a little more Godzilla.